Welcome to the Ibn Abi Umar podcast. This is your host, Umar Usman. We've got a special episode with Brother Mohammed Faris, the founder of the Productive Muslim Company. And in this episode, we're diving into a lot of topics around the idea of faith-based professional development. But the big announcement I wanted to share was that he recently launched his new Barakah Academy, which is an online academy of sorts for faith-based professional development. And the academy includes a number of pre-recorded courses that you can go through. It's got an entire community of professionals that are active in their mastermind calls, the whole bit. And I'm actually going to be leading the book club that is under the Barakah Academy. And the way the book club is going to work is that every quarter we're going to have a theme, and we're going to go through 2 or 3 books. And it's going to be a mix of just regular personal development books as well as Islamic books. We'll be reading everything critically, going through additional resources, the whole bit. There's details in the episode. I've linked everything up in the show notes, so please make sure you go through the show notes. You can click through to sign up there. Hope you enjoy the episode. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm here with Mohammed Faris from the Productive Muslim Company. Welcome, Mohammed.
Thanks, Salam. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
Alhamdulillah, ni'mat.
All right, so we are here. You're obviously the founder of Productive Muslim, or the Productive Muslim Company now. And we are meeting to talk about faith-based personal and professional development. For our audience, this is something that you and I have probably been discussing on and off for what feels like years now.
Yeah.
Maybe quite literally.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that I think we had elements of it, pop up, different ways of looking at it. And I think now you're finally crystallizing it into a more formal product offering and classes. So to kick things off, why don't you kind of let our listeners know what are insights along your journey that you've had that have gotten you to this point of going from productive Muslim in the sense of time management and, Pomodoro timers and taking naps and all that stuff up to this point of this very interesting term of faith-based personal and professional development.
Got it. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. So it's funny because when I first thought of Productive Muslim, the whole idea was just trying to connect this idea of productivity with Islam. So initially it was just trying to slap Islamic terminology to productivity stuff. Like, all right, this is how, for example, wake up early. Oh, God, look, we have Fajr, kind of like the basics kind of linkages there. But
so like they say, wake up at 5 a.m. and you're like, pray the Tahajjud.
Exactly, right? And then after a while you realize, well, okay, that's interesting, but kind of what's the system that's out there, and how does our faith, our spirituality, not just complement but even challenges modern productivity sort of concepts? For example, if you look at the modern productivity concepts, all about output, results, all about getting things done, all about just basically
it's metrics oriented.
Metrics is about results, but output. And Islam sometimes comes in and starts talking about things like look at Nuh alayhi salam. If you look at his life, pretty much, and look at the results of his life. If you think about it, like his people not survive, only few lived. And from a modern productive perspective, quote unquote, he would be, ma'adallah, considered a failure because he did not achieve the results he was looking for.
It wouldn't look good on an Excel spreadsheet.
or his CV or resume, right?
Yeah.
But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Salamun ala fil alameen, he is a successful model. And he really starts challenges this modern sense of productivity, which really comes from the 1930s industrial revolution of factory-based model productivity, about output, results, how much widgets you can produce, to concepts that says things about impact, purpose, intention, niyyah, akhirah focused, what it means in the long run, not being self-centered, and sort of it challenges you. And I think this is where we're at Productive Muslim. We're starting to really question a lot of the stuff that perhaps we've been touting for the past 10 years and think, wait a second, is what we're talking about productivity, is this what really is productivity? Or is there a bigger thing we think about here about how do you manage yourself so that you can fulfill your purpose and role of being an abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Yeah, I think it's a completely different worldview.
Yeah.
So if we take that example of Nuh alayhi salam, from a modern worldview or an American worldview, the productivity or output is the end goal. And so with that being the end goal, everything kind of rises and falls on that. But with the, as you mentioned, the akhirah focus, it shifts the worldview completely in terms of what you value and where your focus should lie.
Exactly. And to be honest, if you think of modern productivity, it's all about control, right? It's, if you think, I mean, look at the latest productivity hacks. It's how do you control your environment, your lights, your heartbeats, your, you know, your calorie counts, your steps.
Yeah, you're micromanaging.
Measuring everything, right? You know, everything about, it's all about this whole notion of controlling all the elements around us.
And for people who are new to you or to me, we just officially put on the record that life hacks are horrible.
Seriously. I mean, they're gimmicky, right?
Yeah, it's gimmick. That's a good way of putting it.
They help you get started, but you can't rely on them to actually achieve any lifelong change your life kind of thing, right?
So learning how to fold your t-shirt in 2 seconds didn't change your life?
Nope, not really. Or even having this like funny alarm clocks that, you know, it doesn't help you wake up early, right? There's a whole thing comes to go wake up early. So this idea of
I could teach a class on how to circumvent alarm clocks.
So this whole idea of control, right? And one of the verses in the Quran that really sort of kind of smacks you in the face. A couple of verses, and both Surah Waqa'ah. Once in the first one says, أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تُمْنُونَ أَنْتُمْ تَخْلُقُونَ نَحْنُ خَالِقُونَ, right? Do you see? I mean, sorry for the language here, but do you see the semen the man produces, right? Are you the one who created it, or are we the creator? And it puts you in the spot. You're like something you think you control. Allah puts you like really corners you. Like you think you're in control.
You have control over nothing.
Nothing. Next one says, أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَحْرُثُونَ. You know, أَنْتُمْ تَزْرَعُونَ نَحْنُ زَارِعُونَ. Do you see that seed which you sow? Are you the one who makes it grow, or are we the grower? Like I put the seed. I worked hard. I plowed the land. I went to work every day. I built my projects. I built a team. It was my ideas. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, is that you? Or is that? And He kind of really puts you in this notion, kind of accepting. It's hard because we're used to being controlled, and especially in our society today, it's like, what do you mean I'm not in control, right? It's all about hard work, the sweat. I call it, the carpenter mindset, the gardener mindset. The carpenter says, I produce this tables, chair, this ladder because I have an image in my mind and I work hard towards it.
Right, I had the vision, I executed, I produced.
Exactly. And the gardener says, well, I put the seed in and I worked hard, I still do the work, but I have no guarantee on the results. And I gotta live with that.
I can't control the rain.
I can't control the rain. I can't control the pests. I can try some stuff, but there's only so much I can go, and before the control is out beyond me. And imagine trying to go to work, right? Yeah. Imagine going to a corporate. I talked to a CEO about this, and he's like, "Don't come to my company." He's like, "What are you trying to do?" It's like, I'm like, well, think about it. We drive people nuts on performance reviews, on getting results, on results-oriented frameworks, all this stuff. When some things are not in their hands, and and I'm not saying just let people off the loose and don't hold them. No, focus on the process, focus on the intentions, focus on we do a whole thing about what's the intention, what's the purpose, the impact, what's your contribution, what's within your control, what's the gardening activities. Right. Even within our own company, when we did Barakah Muslim, only last year, we used to be very obsessed about numbers, like how many sales and corporate courses and workshops. This year was the first year we implemented what we called gardening activities. All right, what are the activities that as Productive Muslim company we got to do as part of us building our company? And we realized 4 activities. One is to attract people to our platform. Second one is to basically build trust. People that trust us through our content, our courses. And then third is enroll them into our programs. And fourth is impact, making sure that it actually makes changes on the ground. So that's the gardening. So I'm holding the team accountable on those activities. I'm not holding it accountable more on how many people signed up and why we have so many refunds and what are others. Yeah. It's a complete, honestly, there's a team. It felt much more less stress, and you become more innovative and creative that way versus, oh my goodness, I gotta make sure I hit the numbers this month kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and part of that comes down to what people are incentivized to do, is what drives the action. And it's like you mentioned factory mindset. So at a previous company that I worked for, we went through Six Sigma, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, but Six Sigma is something that I think it was Toyota that came up with. It was a process to eliminate errors. That on that factory line, can you reduce the number of errors and attain, prime efficiency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was in a role, in a software role, where we're dealing with, high-level clients, whatever, and there's obviously a very humanistic element to service relationships and providing support and people using the software that you've developed and so on. And when you try to roll Six Sigma out on a service or a support type of model, it drives a certain type of results where people now are focused on how many issues did I resolve? How quickly did I resolve them? And whether the customer had a good experience or not, or whether they like your software or hate your software, whatever, that all goes out the window because now you have to make that spreadsheet look good.
Exactly. How many tickets are closed? And exactly. And imagine you come to a company like that and say, all right, putting Six Sigma aside, with all respect to Toyota and all the companies there, what's your intention here as in your role? What impact are you trying to reduce? And well, if I can make my customer happy, especially these high value clients, then that will save the company billions of dollars versus me closing tickets as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So it's this whole approach. And I think the challenge for us, and this is where we're talking about the faith-based personal development corporate training, is how do you bring these concepts, things like niyyah, things like barakah, things like, akhirah focus, things like, gardener mindset, how do you bring that into a modern workplace?
So this is where I would say the challenges to me are quite obvious, right? So as someone that still works in a corporate environment full-time, I can tell you, not that I agree with these advices necessarily, but I'll tell you things that I've heard or that other people have said. So one is that you have to turn your faith off when you come to work. Business is business, so you can't have this religious aspect to it. That's one thing. Another is from a professional development point of view, how does someone actually apply an akhir mindset? Like, how is thinking about the day of judgment going to help me look good in front of my manager?
Yeah.
Right? So there's a little bit of a disconnect. How is religion supposed I get there's basic values that I should work hard, I should do my work with ihsan.
Yep.
That's all the easy stuff. Everyone gets that.
Yep.
But how is it actually going to make me a better professional such that people are saying like, oh, what is this guy doing that I'm not doing?
Yes. How do you, and it's interesting because this is where the discussion is right now. For example, I work with this group called Religious Freedom and Business Foundation, and they look about the idea of religious diversity in the workplace and trying to kind of promote, companies to accept and be more open to religion in the workplace and from their point of view, it's about bringing the whole self to work and, so you don't feel left out and you kind of feel good about yourself. You don't feel like you have to hide to pray and stuff like that. And I always tell them, well, that's nice, right? The idea of religious accommodation accommodate your religious needs, that's like a basic.
Yeah.
But beyond that is how do you harness the mindset of somebody, the values, the stories, right? Because we all grew up with stories. The Quran is full of stories. How do you harness that to help people, become better leaders, become strategic thinkers, to achieve talent, to do things with, to harness. You send them to like thousands of dollars.
So let me give you a curveball.
Please go.
So I would venture to say that in some cases, if a professional in a corporate environment was to truly bring their whole self to work, that it would harm them, in the sense, and I'll explain why I'm saying that it'll harm them. There are certain things that happen in a corporate environment that are antithetical to religious values. Okay. So, for example, let's take performance reviews. In a performance review, I need to hype up myself. Islamically, if I do well on a project, my religious values would dictate to me that I should distribute the credit, that I should deflect praise off of myself. I shouldn't let my ego get inflated. That if someone compliments me, I say, no, it was actually the team, etc. The good, quote unquote, good leadership practices and all of that. But the problem is that then what am I getting recognized for? And then am I going to get overlooked for promotion? And even more than that, just on a day-to-day basis, as a working professional, there become things like, well, this person, this quote-unquote Muhammad is that nice religious guy, but that means that he can't stand up and advocate on our behalf, or he can't kind of fight the battle for us because he too readily says yes or acquiesces or becomes agreeable, or he's too nice to say no.
Got it.
And those things are redeeming at a personal level. It makes people want to hang out with you and be friends with you. But in a corporate environment, it might be like, that's not the right guy.
Perfect, got it. And for me, the challenge, the counter challenge that is would be, it's almost a misunderstanding of the whole value. For example, let's take this example. Do I brag about my professional, results, or do I be humble and not talk about it because I'm trying to ego? And honestly, I look at the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. And Yusuf alayhi salam, I mean, if you think about it, he's in prison. And two people come to him asking about their dreams. And he starts off by telling them, hey, this is my credentials. Hey, I will every food you get, I'll tell you where it came from and who's gonna and what you before you even get it. Like, he talks about his credentials. Like, he didn't ask him, but he kind of said, hey, listen, I know my stuff, and let me explain. And then he explains his dream. So
right.
he quote unquote professionally bragged because he knows his stuff. And then when the king asks him, about, later on, he tells him about, advice. He says, "Ij'alni ala khaza'in al-ard." Make me the treasure on the land. Like, he steps up. He doesn't go, oh, I gotta be humble and wait for the king to come to me and says, please, would you? No, he says, he steps up because I know how to handle this. So sometimes we take these values, we think they come from our faith. We think that Islamically they come from our own, but have we misunderstood them? Have we misrepresented them?
Yeah.
Have we is there nuances that we did not miss?
Or we're missing some.
Exactly.
Because I think in this example, it's a virtue of having an appropriate level of self-confidence that's not arrogance.
Without arrogance, I mean, look, okay.
I think we assume that to not be arrogant means to be meek.
Exactly. I mean, how many times, we hear from the hadith where Prophet ﷺ, where someone asked someone to step up or something, and they would step up, right? And they're like, no, they didn't sit there, okay, no, Prophet, you choose between us, I don't want my ego to get in the way. No, they would step up. They're like, hey, Okasha said, yeah, I want to become the first one. Like, they would this whole, and that's why sometimes, and this is where we got really careful. Yes, faith sometimes
it's really not understanding our religion properly.
Yes. And not knowing how to apply it. And I think this is where the challenge is. And to be honest with you, it's almost like an ongoing work and research that needs to happen, and hopefully that our work is a step in that direction.
It is, and I think one of the big challenges has been, so one, we don't understand what our religion actually says about these topics, but I think two, the problem is that it's like you said, one of the things that happened early on is that we read things framed from a secular point of view,
you just slap it on,
and then slap the
Islamic terminologies,
and we're all guilty of it, right? Like, I did that for a long time too.
We knew this 1400 years ago.
It's and so like, oh wait, we have a hadith that says the same thing. Woohoo!
Exactly. We want,
and so we retrofit the religion into the secular frameworks.
Exactly.
And so then we miss a lot.
And honestly, it's down to our, I guess, inferiority complex, right? We feel like we're inferior and we want to prove ourselves so badly. It's like, oh look, we have this too. Versus, I think the question now is, what do we add? Like, how can we add to the leadership research? You've done a lot of work in leadership yourself. Like, just imagine taking the prophetic model and saying, well, what do you add? What do we add as a faith? I mean,
well, the epiphany for me was, so I did the John Maxwell certification, etc. And for those not familiar with him, so John Maxwell is probably one of the leading experts on leadership. His book 21 Laws of Leadership is probably one of the most famous or best-selling leadership books for that genre, right? But the thing is that he himself is an evangelical Christian. He learned the art of leadership by leading and building churches. And then he took those lessons and then propagated out that this is how you lead, this is how you influence, this is how you do all of these things. And when that message resonated, people who were not of the same faith then come flocking, right? And so people who are completely agnostic or atheist are still coming because there's valuable lessons here. People like me who are practicing Muslims are coming and saying, yes, you're whatever, but we actually identify with the faith-based background maybe quite a bit more, and so we have an appreciation for it. But then my thing was, well, if we have the best example, why aren't all these people coming to us?
And to be honest with you,
why are we still going to them?
3 things. Number 1, we are not spending time in research. Right, a lot of our work is still too surface level.
We haven't developed the thoughts,
the theories, the frameworks, and then tested the research. Number 2, honestly,
and that was one thing that I noticed was, like, even if you take someone like Maxwell, the body of work is just so huge, right? And there's just so much value there that it's impossible to overlook.
Yes, exactly. And that's number 2. It would say, 1 is the research, 2 is actually published talk. Like, imagine if you go to any self-help section right now, even a faith-based self-help, you see a lot of Christian-based or Buddhist-based self-help books, which are generally, we don't see many Muslim self-help, whether to Muslims or non-Muslims. There are some, but very few and far between. And it's almost like we need to do more thinking, do more research, and do more writing to at least start putting our voices there and say, hey, there's something we need to add. Islam is the last divine message to mankind, for crying out loud. Like, there's a lot that needs to be added. It could be a lot of value in all these, especially the stuff which are human-based, like personal development, professional development, dealing with issues. Like, you imagine like team dynamics, right? Imagine like decision making, things like, grit. Talk about grit early on, sabr and grit, and in this whole mindfulness, gratefulness, like all there's so much stuff out there that is almost like we're trying to fit in. We're trying to find our voices.
There's a lot of stuff that people are grasping at that we have a solution for
a grounding,
but people are
exactly
they're reached like meditation or whatever. And it's like, well,
so what?
I don't want to like slap the Islamic label on it, but it's like reframe and say like, okay, you need to come at it with a different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I like the work of Professor Malik Badri. He really like it puts meditation in perspective. Meditation is just like the side benefit. The bigger goal is contemplation, who Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is, right? Yeah. And so yes, you can get into meditative state. And yes, it's like a nice little. It's almost like getting endorphins when you exercise. You're feeling like, oh, I feel great after I work out. But that's not the purpose of the workout. It's just to feel great. Is there's a bigger, longer health general. So the idea, the same thing with meditation and all this concept where there is a higher purpose, and this higher purpose of really remembering that you are a slave of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and your life needs to be built from that perspective. Whether you're a leader, whether you are a professional, whether you are a mother, whether you are, every role you play in life is how does that fit with me being a abd of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and then building frameworks based on that concept. And I think this is where the value can be very powerful. So
one of these frameworks to build out, and it's something that I know you've written about. I wrote something about it, not similar, but my take, which is this idea of the Barakah culture and hustle culture.
Yeah.
And I think this is maybe a good place to go a little bit deeper, because it lays out, if you look online, online is literally the hustle culture, the hashtag rise and grind, and no breaks. This is the Gary Vaynerchuk, like just all out all the time, and it's there's an appeal to it for a certain type of person. Like if you're lazy, then it's a good swift kick in the butt to like do something. Mm-hmm. But talk about the worldview between the two, because that swift kick in the butt only goes so far, and you can only tell someone like keep hustling, and it's just like shut up.
I mean, this idea this thought came when we were looking at, okay, when you look at the model of success, right? What do you consider model success for people? And a lot of times it's those who hustle, right? If you hustle, then you're successful. That's kind of the message you get in the world. But then the question is, what's the alternative? Because you can't, if I say, well, don't hustle, then what does that mean? What's the alternative? So we proposed a framework. So, well, what if we approach life from a different perspective, from a Barakah perspective? It's not about the hustle, but it's about doing things with the right mindsets, values, and rituals that help you get Barakah. For example, I can wake up 4 o'clock in the morning and we'll go to the gym, work hard, have my plan for the day, have my protein-based breakfast, do some like next level high, call my assistant at 6 a.m. and put my task down. And
drink a glass of oat milk,
coffee, a bulletproof coffee, and just go all out, right?
I refuse to put butter in my coffee. The dumbest thing I ever heard.
Now, and then someone can say, instead, I'll wake up, pray Fajr, read some Quran, do Adhkar, which from a hustle culture perspective, like that's insane. So that's quote unquote a waste of time. Okay, maybe you can meditate for like 5 minutes using an app, but what, you're spending an hour, 2 hours, like doing Fajr, doing Quran, doing Adhkar, like what sort of person you are, and then spending time with your family. Oh my God, spending time with your family? Like, come on, hustle culture is no time.
No, you gotta answer emails.
You gotta answer emails, 5 a.m. And it's like, wait a second. So it's ideal, but still, the fact you do this is you start your day with Fajr, Quran, and Adhkar. There's the rituals. You have the mindset of having the trust that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. You put your hard work, but you trust the outcomes of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, not from you. You are less egocentric and more impact driven, and having think about your intention. What are my intentions for today versus what are my results and my tasks for the day, kind of thing. That sort of shift, honestly, it's like it's a stress-free way of getting through life and achieving results beyond your expectations.
Yeah.
Give me an example. Think about, if you're in a book business, right? You understand books. the average life of a book is 3 years. That's what they normally say, right?
Yeah.
And even these things that go on New York bestsellers, it's very, we talk about like some of the books we read, like how could this be a New York bestseller? Like, I don't know how they got there, but they
No, because they had money and they
PR,
bought their place on the list.
Boom. But then,
And if that's people wanted that's actually a thing.
yeah. And now, but then fast forward that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, will those books be relevant again? Versus, imagine books,
No, some of the books that I pre-order stop being relevant about an hour after they arrive. It's so frustrating because it gets hyped up and I've been following. So I'm like, man, this will be really good. And I get the book and like, eesh. One of them was I don't want to bash books.
Let's not go there. Let's go there. But then the other side, imagine we reread books today, which are written 1,000 years ago, 700 years ago. Like, it's funny, I'm reading a book about Barakah, written 700 years ago by a Yemeni scholar. Like, what sort of, that's impact that your work continues 700, can you imagine your book lasting 700 years from now and someone reading and benefiting and
I'd like to imagine writing a book to begin with, but
this is where, imagine living life with a Barakah mindset. It's not about, this is one thing when I went to Southeast Asia in Singapore and I gave this workshop Barakah, one of the things that really struck me is that Barakah is not about you, it's actually about you almost you passing on. It's not about your legacy. It's about my legacy, right? How can I build my own legacy? Barakah is not about your legacy. It's about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protecting your legacy by, not through your own will, but by His like mercy and His like, His acceptance of your work, the work you're doing.
Yeah.
So imagine going through life saying, Allah accept, really, Allah accept this. I'm not sure how far this would go. You're taking your ego out, you're doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're being very, the worldview said is very akhir focused, God conscious. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taking that, and then like a garden, right? He grows fruits from it that you don't even imagine, 100 years ago, 100 years from now.
So how do you apply? So what would be the application of this for the person that comes to you and says, okay, that's cool. I wake up for Fajr, I read my Quran, but then I get to work and I'm behind on my deadlines. I have 300 unread email messages. I have 4 hours of back-to-back meetings. My manager's breathing down my neck. I have a major deliverable coming up in a week. I can barely keep my head above water. Explain to me again how this Barakah thing is supposed to work and manage my day and make I don't have a productivity problem.
Yes.
I'm super productive.
Yes.
I'm going end to end. I eat at my desk. I barely get up to drink water. I'm non-stop. But I'm still not making headway. I'm not accomplishing it. I'm not making the accomplishments that I want. But I'm in survival mode and doing what I can to get as much as I can done at work. But it doesn't seem like anything's happening.
This is where it's interesting. So it's almost like how you tackle that battle, right? Just because you're going through, you have Barakah culture does not mean you, mashallah, you live in nirvana and you can sort of, kind of float through work and
you can visualize your way to success.
Exactly. You can ninja all your tasks and emails, right? That's not the concept, but it's
put them on a vision board.
Exactly. It's how you're approaching work, how you're thinking about the work. It's not consuming you. It's not driving. You still achieve, you still accomplish, still move forward, but it's not becomes this almost like feel like a life or death situation for you. Like, oh my God, if I don't get these 300 emails off my desk. For example, I had a friend of mine, he's going in Hajj. He's like, oh my God, I gotta get my emails down to 0. I'm like, why? What does it matter to get?
They're gonna be back up to 600 when you get back.
But it's like hustle culture. I gotta tick it off my to-do list, otherwise I feel unaccomplished. And I'm thinking, well, what mindset drives you to that level, right?
Can I share a productivity life hack with you?
Go for it.
I feel great about sharing a productivity life hack with you, but so my strategy for inbox 0 now is to ignore my email.
Classic.
That's the best life hack I've ever come up. Actually, no, I'll tell you the real hack was that Gmail is blocked for me at work. So I can only check it on my phone or when I get home.
Nice.
And I just don't care that much anymore.
There we go. Moving it forward. So again, and this is where there's a hadith that kind of helped me with even this whole notion of how he approaches. It says, "Man asbaha wa hamhu dunya," right? Whoever wakes up and his main concern is this dunya, right? Then it's almost like shaddat Allah amra. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will disperse matters for him, right? You get looking right and left. You're also just overwhelmed. And then you just get to go stressed and you're overwhelmed all the place. And then the other side of the hadith is man asbaha wa hammuhu al-akhirah. Whoever wakes up and his main concern is akhirah, jama'a Allah alayhi shaml. Allah will gather matters for him, right? And there's an element of that.
Can I tell you like an amazing story? So I had this situation one time at work where I had that type of a manager who was creating the hum, like the anxiety. Like so much so that I couldn't function even on the weekend. Because even once Friday came, all I could think about was like getting chewed out on Monday because I messed up something or was behind on something, even though like everything in my control I was doing to the best that I could, but it still wasn't enough, right? Yep. So the whole weekend I couldn't function, I couldn't play with the kids, I couldn't think about anything. And it's exactly like you're saying, like your worry then becomes the dunya and the job, and it becomes the end all be all. And I was reaching like that breaking point of I'm like, do I just need to quit? Like that became the thought process. Now I was like, okay, if I quit, how long could I go without finding another job? Like that's where the mind went, right? Yeah. And then the hilarious thing is that at the peak of like the difficulty of this, I walked into work one day and there was a flash meeting. And anyone in corporate environment, flash meeting is never good, right? Flash meetings they're never for good news. A flash meeting where it's like drop everything, get on the phone for like 20 minutes means people are getting laid off, right? So you have a flash meeting, I'm just like, oh crap. Yeah. Okay, here we go. And all of a sudden on this flash meeting, they announced a restructuring.
Wow.
And it turned out that the guy that had been making my life like super miserable for the past month was leaving the company and I was being reassigned to somebody else.
Wow.
And it was just like all of a sudden this huge burden had been lifted off my shoulders. And so I went and I told my parents, and then my mom told me, she goes, yeah, I've been making dua all week that Allah gets this guy off your back. She goes, I didn't think that he would just leave the whole company altogether.
There you go. And so think about this. Now here's the question for you. If you knew this was going to happen.
Oh, I would have been, my stress level would have been like 10% of what it was in that time.
A week ago, right? Over the weekend. Like imagine if you knew.
I would have enjoyed the weekend at least.
But if you knew, if Allah gave you the ilm al-ghayb, you knew He's leaving, right? And this is where sometimes this is why spirituality and faith in the workplace, we face it every day. We're trying to rationalize, we're trying to secularize our workplace, trying to rationalize things. And, but I'm not saying don't work. I'm not saying not strategize how you're going to deal with your manager. But again, some things that it's recognizing who's in control and not letting the corporate world and training is completely consumed to the point where, like I said, the hustle culture just drives you nuts. We had this lady. She came to our retreat in Indonesia. She said, for the first time in life, I wake up, I pray Fajr, exercise, have breakfast, and not check my phone for 4 hours. She goes, I can wake up 5 a.m. for a conference call. I cannot wake up 5 a.m. for Fajr prayer.
Wow.
And she goes, and that's when I realized, wow, like this has become such an obsession for me that, and the other side of my life is not that.
Man, that hurts. I've gotten up for the 5 a.m. conference call with India.
There we go. I mean, it's consumed us, and I think that's where and instead of having, and at the same time, one thing that I'm really interested in nowadays is the stories of people who follow Barakah culture and seeing not just success from a material perspective, but just genuine impact beyond expectation from what they're doing, from what they work. And this is where, it's kind of I'm still correcting the stories, but I feel like this is where we now want to see role models. Because someone said, well, that's not how so-and-so get to the C-suite, but maybe there is role, but we just haven't heard the stories.
Well, the other thing, religiously speaking, and this is something that I've kind of learned the hard way, was, again, we assume that religion means that you kind of lay back, that you take the punches and you don't. And I've had situations where I didn't stand up for myself, right? Because I'm like, I shouldn't talk back, I shouldn't be problematic, I shouldn't be this. And so you tell yourself all these things, but then you kind of learn the hard way that actually I should have stood up for myself. I should have said something. That doesn't mean that I have to be a jerk. I didn't have to like curse the other person out. But there is a religious value in having confidence and kind of defending your right, so to speak.
Yeah. The example, the arrogance in front of the arrogant is worship. Right? There's a powerful kind of hadith was saying about Shafi, the arrogance, takabbur, mutakabbir, ibadah. Like it's literally because sometimes you just need to like shake them. Like, hey, listen, if you can be, I'm getting arrogant as you are, but I'm trying to bring you down. And again, it's having that grounding. That's why things like the rituals we do, right? The salah and the fasting and the sadaqah, these things ground you. These are things that kind of like these are called keystone habits that they kind of hold you down. And then the mindset's like the operating system, right? It's not like how do you operate, how you think about the world. And then the values are like the applications, like the value of honesty, the value of justice, the value of so and so, which you can access as you go through work. It's just imagine how powerful it is to be able to pack that inside a professional. So and really power them through the corporate.
This reminds me of one. We talked about this when we did the Level Up class way back when. But one piece of feedback that we had gotten from people with what do you struggle with as a Muslim professional was like, I'm afraid to speak up in meetings. And so that's a microcosm. When it comes to faith, like professional development, I think most people aren't concerned with hard skills, right? Like everyone's good at their engineering or their coding or their accounting or, whatever their skill is. Most people got that in the bag. It's all the other stuff where I think the religion plays the biggest role. So things like, I'm afraid to speak up in a meeting. Why? Because, well, what if I get shot down? Then something negative is going to happen, right? There's maybe an element of tawakkul in the sense of, you think that your boss controls your sustenance, but they don't, right? So have the confidence to speak up. Another is, well, if I speak up and share this idea, someone's going to take it and steal the credit for it. And then they're going to run with it and they're going to have a successful career and I'm going to be suffering and miserable. I'm going to be like the dude that got cut out of Facebook or whatever, right? Like, but I think at the religious grounding is very important for knowing how to navigate those situations. And I think like a Barakah mindset is knowing that, okay, so you know what? Even if you stole my good idea, why is that the only one?
Yes.
I don't have the ability to come up with like a dozen more.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing with religious knowledge is always being conscious and careful because, like I said, I think the way we've been taught religion sometimes comes in this almost like compartmentalized that we okay, this is Islam, it's in the masjid, this is how we do it, this is how we think, this is how we approach life. And then you enter workplace like, well, and there's many professional companies say, I don't see relevance of my spiritual. What are we talking? Like when I love the first day of a corporate, if I do corporate training, especially in Singapore, Malaysia, that first day that everyone looks at me as if I came from Mars. They're like, is this guy really talking about religion in the office? Like, is this real? And this is sometimes in a Muslim majority country, in almost all the staff are Muslim, but this find like, really, this guy gonna talk about this? But by the second, third day, like, everyone relaxes and everyone starts sharing like, oh yeah, I've had this and this that and this Barakah. So I think we have it in us. It's just
what's the turning point? What in those workshops is the thing that kind of flips that switch for them where they're like, oh, this is taboo to, oh, we need to embrace this?
When we talk about, I think the Barakah culture is hustle culture, it dawns upon them. They're like, when we start measuring your performance across your roles, you might be a great performer at work, but how is your performance across your other roles? And what does it mean for you to make choices between performing at work versus being a family person versus being, a philosopher, like being a work? Like how do you have a well-rounded, meaningful life that when you go to the last day, in your deathbed, you don't regret, right? There's this whole, as cliche as it sounds, it's sometimes like they're like, I never thought about it.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's one thing, right? Like the dirty secret to professional development is you can be amazing at work and at business. If you're willing to sacrifice family and everything else, you can do awesome.
pretty much going to. And the thing, and the question is, again, it's about,
and not that you can't be awesome without, you can maintain all. And I think the challenge is, how do you be awesome at all of them?
It's not, again, it's back to trying to be in control. It's not you being awesome all of them. It's you saying, what's for example, the way I look at it, I don't like to talk about work-life balance, talk about fulfilling the huquq, right? As long as I fulfill the haqq of my work, the haqq of my family, the haqq of my Rabb, the haqq of myself, haqq of my body, haqq of my children. Beyond that is ihsan. If I do above that, and less than that, I'll be held accountable. So it's not work-life balance where, okay, 8 hours of work, 8 hours of, no. It's more saying, am I fulfilling the rights of people? Because that's what I'll be held accountable for.
Yeah.
The rights, right? So again, this approach, even something like that, is you can be, maybe not be awesome.
So let me give you a question. So here's a discussion that I had with some friends a few weeks ago, because Ramadan is in the summertime and it's hard.
Yeah.
Right? Texas, we got long days, it's hot, the whole bit, wine. Yes, woe is us. Okay.
Yep.
Fine. Shawwal comes, and so let me pause. In Ramadan, the guys that I talk to regularly, we're all kind of in the same thing of we're doing the best we can at work.
Yeah.
Yes, we're not performing at peak optimal level, but I think everyone in some respect made a conscious decision that they were going to have to sacrifice some level of their performance in Ramadan in order to meet the obligations at work.
Okay.
Right? So for me to, yes, I could pray 8 rakat or 20 or whatever you want. I could pray however many rakat your masjid does every night, but it would mean that I would sleep in. It would mean that I would be groggy when I got to work, and it would mean that I would not be fulfilling the basic duties at work.
The haqq of work.
Whereas I could meet my obligations, say, of praying Isha, maybe having to forego some of the voluntary yet virtuous stuff in order that when I get to work in the morning at 7 or 8 or 9 that I am alert and ready to go. And yes, I might not be super optimal, but no one's worried about me dropping the ball on anything. And now, but that's not my question. That's the setup to my question.
Fair.
Which was then when Shawwal came, then the discussion was, do we do the 6th fast of Shawwal if it's going to cause a sacrifice in work performance? Because Ramadan was already tough. Now tacking on 6 more, and I know people that said straight up, like, I'm not doing the 6th fast of Shawwal because I'm not going to be able to survive at work. And at first it makes you cringe. It sounds like that really immature college student who's like, I have an exam, I can't fast. It's like, oh, shut up and fast. Like, get over it, right? Like, but this is a very real struggle because the stakes are much higher. And this is not as simplistic as obligatory fasting. Right now we're talking about balancing what's virtuous and what's obligated on.
I mean, the way everything we were talking about earlier on is sometimes we want to have this one size fits all, right? Everyone should fast 6 days of Shawwal. Everyone should do 20 rakats, and it's not. And else for that is I'll see what's your station, what's your journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How someone said, I'm not at the stage where I feel like I'm able to fast the 6 days of Shawwal. Spiritually, I'm not ready. I'll probably be even cranky and be like almost quote unquote upset that I have to do the 6 days kind of thing. Versus I'll fast maybe once a week for the next, for the rest of my year, for example. And I feel like, I can stick to once a week and not feel it impacting. So that's one approach, is where you are in that journey towards your spirituality and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second thing is this is where Barakah mindset comes in, because sometimes when we talk about Barakah cultures, is a lot of the things that give you Barakah require some kind of sacrifice. For example, the classic one is giving up some money for charity,
right? And
there's a return, right? There's a return on Barakah kind of thing, and you having that yaqeen, that certainty that I'm fasting. Yes, I might feel groggy and tired, but it's almost like, I mean, you have this, I don't know if you have this Ramadan, like, I'm groggy, I'm not at my best performance. Again, I'm not in control, my performance is terrible. But things are getting done, things are moving forward. Things are easier, like...
Timelines are getting extended.
Something's moving.
Meetings are getting cancelled.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, I can go nap in my car.
Seriously. So there's something that's beyond you. And again, we just don't make that linkage. Well, as much as because again we don't know how the divine works, but it's there. And I think we need to somehow. I remember once this is in my career, I worked in a bank, and I had this big presentation in front of the president and vice presidents, and it was a big presentation where I was talking. I'm basically sharing the bad. I was the messenger who was kind of sharing the bad news, basically. And I remember that day, I said I'll fast. I said I'll fast that day, with the understanding that I want like this fasting to like be like almost like quote unquote protection, right? Now call superstition, call whatever, but honestly speaking, even though the meeting was disastrous, meaning the vice president was shouting at me, right? This was like, I thought I'm getting fired today. I was literally on my desk waiting to pack my bags and go.
I guess I will die in the state of fasting.
Exactly. I'm a shaheed, right? But I left that, a few years later, those vice presidents left. That's a funny thing. When I go, now I'm actually called back, and to work with that same company I used to work for, people still remember that meeting. It's left a lasting till today. They're like, oh, you're the guy who said this, like, who cannot believe it. And it's helped me, my reputation in the long run versus, and I'm like, did I plan that?
There's no way you can plan it.
Right? Did I think about it? No, you just, it's like, so sometimes there's an element
new
of
strategy at work. Tick off the vice president.
Or fast when you want to tick off the vice president, right? Right. So I think, so there's two parts. One is where you are on that journey. The second one is how you, is really having that yaqeen that these rituals, there is I call return of barakah that you do not foresee. But it's not about testing stuff or testing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or trying to, let me try this and see what happens.
Yeah.
No, you gotta have a full conviction that there's good that'll come out of this beyond what I cannot see the result, but there's good that'll come out of this, and this is where the challenge is.
I think, and one thing, at least for me, in terms of the faith-based professional development, etc., is I think stress management is an underrated problem, but also a benefit in a sense of the stronger your iman becomes, like the stronger your faith becomes, the easier it is not to let work stuff rattle you. And that doesn't mean that you don't, and I think there's like you can't take work too seriously in the sense that it consumes you, but you have to still take your work seriously.
That's awesome. That's
very
quotable. That's a quotable right there. We should put that as a tagline of this podcast.
You can't slack. You can't be lazy. You have to take your work very seriously, but you can't let the whole thing become so serious that it cripples you.
Consumes you. And like I said, it's just because you adopt this mindset does not mean you're not going to have stress. It does not mean you're not going to have bad bosses. It does not mean things will be amazing, smooth for you. No, you will face.
You have better tools to deal with those problems that come.
And as they hit you, right? As they hit you, almost you feel like you're building capacity. That's why sometimes I think about the Prophet ﷺ and how he used to pray tahajjud at night, right? And I felt like that was his me time. Him getting up, pray tahajjud. Because he was, the problems he was dealing with, people. I mean, just to deal with 100,000 people and all the issues, munafiqeen. I was like, can you just imagine trying to handle him getting up for tahajjud was his way to like build his capacity, spiritual capacity to deal with this. And I think as professionals, like we need to think about we deal with a lot of stuff to come out between home, work, family, getting up, the prayers, they help us build a spiritual capacity to handle, to kind of be buffer against all this life,
The faith, it's an indispensable part of building
it's not even optional. I also say it's not optional anymore, and I don't see it as an extracurricular activity. When I have time I do this. I'm like,
and I think this goes back to why it can't be compartmentalized. It's not that you turn off faith, you go to work, you be a worker, an employee, and then check out, go home, eat dinner, now go to the masjid and be religious.
Yes, exactly. It's seeing the power of your faith to help you live this life of meaning, of impact, of barakah, and seeing the goodness, and almost like beyond your work, way beyond your own children, your own family. It's honestly, it's a much more fulfilling way of living. And so I'm hoping that's the message that we get from this.
And and I think that always fascinates me when we look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, when as a leader, as the role model, we always get this idea like his akhlaq was the pinnacle of good character. He was sent to perfect good character, so on and so on. And we hear it so often that we almost start thinking like, okay, so this means saying please and thank you, or doing this. It's kind of like, no, that's just basic decency. Yeah. I think the thing that I find most fascinating is when stakes were high, right? When it's Treaty of Hudaybiyah, when it's the story of the Sahabi like Hatib ibn Abi Baltar, that he sent a letter to the Quraysh tipping them off that the Muslim army is coming. Yeah. And now he's brought in front of the Prophet and other Sahabis are getting upset. Commander's like, we need to execute him. He's done this, done that. And they're 100% correct. Like, they're correct that he gave up state secrets. He's, whatever, like, this has happened.
Yeah.
And even in the high alert situations, he maintains that integrity, the empathy, you can almost say being professional, being respectful, not letting his anger overtake him in a way that he acts out of it like irrationally or something like that, right? Which we could very easily succumb to.
Yes.
But I think the most fascinating thing for me is that it's not that he didn't deal with stress, obviously, but it was that in the high stress environments, he still functioned with that perfection of character.
That is profound. And for me personally, when we deal with productivity, when we did the daily routine of the Prophet ﷺ, we tried to analyze how does his routine look like, and we did an infographic article. And I'm looking at that routine. I mean, honestly, this is the most influential man in history. This is the most successful man in history. This is one who had impact till today. Like it's not hustle culture. I'll say that. Now, right? And it's mind-boggling. At the same time, the thing that you never hear any single Sahabi or his wives or his children or his grandchildren complain, Ya Rasulullah, you're not giving us enough time.
No, it was the opposite. Is everyone felt that he was their best friend.
His best friend. And imagine, like, take it to your own life, right? To our own life. Like, you come home, like, you don't feel like you're spending enough time with your children. Also, because when you're at home, you think about work. When you're at work, you think about home. And when you're children, you think about your phones. And it's like, the fact is, even though, despite all the people, he was present. He was there. He was not driven by his death by calendar or driven by his watch.
Yeah.
Where he would be walking Medina trying to do something, and a little girl will come and tug his shirt and say, "Ya Rasulullah, come with me or share something," and he would go with her, and then he'll come back and like, the guy's trying to save humanity. Right? He doesn't have time for this. But look at him.
I think part of this is that the faith is necessary to give you a bigger picture. And I don't just mean like your vision and all that, but I mean like an actual bigger picture. Because being micromanaged by your calendar or by this and that. Like, you see, we're sitting in my office right now, but I have a wall calendar that literally just has the whole year on it. That's my productivity tool. Yeah, I schedule by the week and the month. I can't do hour by hour or day by day. It's too much. Yeah.
And what happens? Here's a question: what happens if things don't go as planned?
It's a dry erase calendar. I just erase it and write it somewhere else.
And being comfortable with that. Yeah. Being comfortable with that. It's almost like this idea where...
But the thing is that if I was drowning in the details of each and every... Like, because if I'm micromanaging every minute of every day, every hour of every day, every bite that I eat, every sip of... you can endlessly track everything. But I think being that quote-unquote productive... When you miss the bigger picture, you lose all of it. Yeah.
I'll be honest, I'm guilty of this. I'm the one.
And you're wearing a Fitbit right now.
Exactly. I'm wearing a Fitbit. I have my, every Sunday evening, I sit down, I plan my week calendar hour by hour, right? But what I've learned is when things don't go my way, I'm comfortable with that. In fact, one of the managers I met in Dubai, he runs the Dubai Islamic Bank, amazing guy. He's a manager at Dubai Islamic Bank. He says he prays istikhara 5 times a day. I'm like, say what? Like, he prays for like 5 times. Like, how? Because my first istikhara is asking Allah, for the plan of the day. Because I have a plan for the day, I pray istikhara on my plan for the day. My second istikhara is around 10, 11 on any major issues that I have to go deal with that day. My third istikhara is for things that will do with my family. My fourth istikhara is my plan for next day. My fifth istikhara is like, fifth istikhara is like, I think it's like, something like, again, something that's a bigger goal he has trying to move towards. And he goes, I'm like, every day, like every day. And I was like, and what have you found? It's like amazing. Like, I'm not as attached to my...
He's at peace with whatever happens.
Exactly. It still plans. He's a planner, right?
Yeah, you still plan, you still work, you still...
But he's not attached. He doesn't have this regret that comes with, I should have done it. And I think, wow, like... That's a mindset, and again, that's Barakah culture right there. That's Barakah culture. Imagine trying to explain this to hustle culture. They're like, well, say what? It's like, bring out your treat, all the decision making.
You need to make 7 Instagram posts every day. Or you're not working hard enough. It's like, there you go. It's like, yes, that's what I need to be better at work. Okay. But one thing I wanted to ask you about before we close. Before we got on the mic, we were having an interesting conversation about books that I wanted to revisit for the sake of the podcast because it's something I think we both have strong feelings about. But, we talked about the journey of hey, we discovered this cool thing, productivity or marketing or leadership or whatever, right? And say, oh, this is cool. I've never heard these concepts talked about in this way. Hey, we need to put an Islamic label on it.
Yeah.
And then it'll come back and it's like, oh, actually, some of the stuff that I was reading that I thought was so mind-blowing is actually garbage.
Yep.
And it's actually not practical, and it's actually unrealistic, and it's, a book as a business card, or a book that wasn't really meant to be actually helpful or anything like that. What's been your, what's changed your perspectives? Mm-hmm. What's your approach with reading and developing? Because, and the reason that I want to talk about this is, a lot of this stuff gets thrown under this label of like self-help or self-development, which I don't particularly like that or even agree with it in a sense. I think a lot of it is more self-education, and I think it's more professional development in the sense that there are specific skills you should be working on. Mm-hmm. So time management is a skill, communication is a skill, these types of things. But what's been your journey in the sense of what became mind-blowing and then now you're just cringe at the thought of it?
Yeah, so I'm the guy who was like a GTD fan and all that productivity stuff. And I mean,
I read GTD and I went and bought a ream of white, like 500 sheets of white paper. This is, by the way, for everyone who's like bought paper, but this is before Evernote existed. But I did it for a week and then I was like, okay, I don't understand this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, again,
and for those wondering, GTD is Getting Things Done by David Allen. Yeah.
There's some great books out there. I mean, and I have to commend all the authors and thinkers of actually putting pen to paper, because writing a book is not easy, right? It's easy to sit down and criticize books and say, oh, they're not that.
It's still a lifetime of insights in a sense that this person has accumulated and tried to convey.
Exactly. The challenge for us, and I think this is where hopefully we try and do this in our upcoming, in our academy, is the idea of there's a worldview that is associated. Every author comes with their own worldview. Every author sees the world from perspective, right? And so they try to explain life through their worldview. And as Muslims, we also have a worldview that is basically dictated to us by the Quran and the Sunnah and the sayings of the Prophet and the Seerah. And sometimes the challenge for us is trying to consume the.
Can I quickly summarize this as a revelation-based worldview versus an observational-based worldview, which sometimes will be in harmony and sometimes will be at conflict.
Excellent. That's the excellent way of putting it. So imagine you approach life with a sort of revelation-based worldview, tongue twister there, and reading the book, so you almost have to be conscious, like, is this in line or not? That's number one.
Yeah. And
it's not about saying haram, halal. No, it's not like, oh, I should be careful. No. It's just being.
And it's almost never haram and halal.
Exactly.
It's almost always more on just the fuzzy edges of like, how are we supposed to think about this topic?
Exactly. So for example, like getting things done. Okay, well, I can get things done. That's awesome. I don't know if I can get things done. I love that guy, David Allen. When I was starting off, that was my hero. It's you have to go through it exactly
to get to the other side.
Yeah, and it's almost like, but it's almost like, well, how does getting things done help me in terms of living a Barakah lifestyle? Some things do help. I still use some of his style, some of his tools, right? Some things that are still stuck with me.
There's some insights that will stick, but not the whole system, maybe.
So I think our challenge is to have, I think this is what we're working on together in the Barakah Academy Book Club. It's called this faith-based critical thinking. So it's not enough to be critical thinkers. It's about saying, well, no, let's look at it let's be critical thinkers and really filter things from a faith perspective and start asking questions, challenging, saying, well, what about this? What about that? For example, you've read lots of leadership books. Some leadership books fly in the face of the seerah, right? And some leadership books are in lines. And the question is, how do you sift through that? And how do you develop the skill, right? The skill of reading books through that mindset. And now...
Well, and when you talk about critical thinking... Yeah. I should say that it's not even just the revelation aspect. So if we take leadership, there's some things that you read and you're like, oh, this you could plug and play with the seerah, right? Like this is a great framework for explaining some things that happen in the seerah. It meshes really well.
Yes.
Some things they'll tell you, certain things you're like, this goes completely against prophetic character, so I know to filter that out.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of stuff. that when you apply the critical thinking lens of it doesn't even fit observational reality. And for me, that wake-up call, I took a one-day seminar on John Maxwell's book called The 5 Levels of Leadership. And so they went through, whatever his 5 levels are, etc. And toward the end of the day in the Q&A, someone was saying like, okay, well, this is great. What do I do about my manager who's stuck on these bad leadership habits? And then he made a joke. So he asked that, and the instructor goes, well, have your manager come take the class, like as the the typical lame corporate joke to plug the program. But then the guy asking the question goes, well, actually she took this course. Ouch. And I was like, oh. And when that happened, that to me was a wake-up call of like, oh, so this is not... Because initially you think like, oh, if everyone just learned this, it would all be better. And it's like, no, actually, people do learn it.
Yes.
But there's something missing in either an application or the theory being taught is incorrect. And a lot of people don't think about that part of it.
Or even the drive or the intention, right? Because for example, there's a lot of great books about generosity and mindfulness and being grateful, but
gratitude journal.
Exactly, but you need a almost like an operating system in your brain that tells you to plug into these concepts and draw from them. If I'm achieve life from a worldview where, hey, it's a scarcity worldview where resources are limited, I gotta show off, or I gotta take a winner takes all, then I don't care about your gratefulness, meditation, mindfulness, being nice and, have sabr and live life of tawakkul, right? That just doesn't sit with me at all.
It doesn't fit my worldview. I'm just trying to keep increasing my stock value.
Even if the mainstream books come with them amazing theories and concepts and results and showing, oh, look, these are this, we observe these people do these things and this is what happened to them. There is an element of that intention, the element of the need, the element of like you having the operating system in your brain to drive it. And the classic example is Sahaba. Think of the Sahaba, the classic example, because before revelation, after revelation. Before revelation, they were, if you think about it, like these were nomads, they were killing each other, they were performing stuff which were like, heinous, right?
Right.
Now, you can imagine going to that crowd and trying to give them some, oh, by the way, you should be nice to your neighbor. And things.
You should be more empathetic.
You should be more empathetic, right? I mean, who cares? And the revelation comes and changes the person from the core.
What did your ancestors do that upset them? Look at it from their point of view.
Exactly, right? And then revelation comes and changes people's core humanity. And these people become these amazing, adopt all this stuff and run with it without even, and have impact. And I think this is where... yes, observation can take us up to a certain level, maybe, if it's true, if it's correct, if it's assuming theory is solid.
If observation is true, it brings you to what revelation has already told you.
Yes, but the revelation will help you with the getting, going forward and actually implementing and taking it further.
The revelation will give where it mixes. The revelation obviously gives you the foundation, right?
And the drive.
Yeah.
The drive. Like, why would you go out of your way, right? To example, like have some things. Okay, I'm nice. And like I said, when the stakes are high, I love this question: who are you on a bad day?
Yeah.
Right. Like, who are you on a bad day? Like, revelation comes and helps you there.
If you're not grounded in revelation, then you will give in to the other.
You'll give to your impulses, give in to the societal pressure, give in to your own ego, your nafs, right? So sometimes revelation comes, and I feel like this is where talking about the value of faith, the value of religion. It's a whole field that needs to be just explored, researched, discussed, and honestly, it's exciting. It's just exciting being at this crossroad where we've gone, and both of us been on this journey where we've read a lot, and we all come like, wait a second, it's not just it's making sense or not, but the way it's like there's a whole world here that we haven't even touched, and I think we need to add value and talk about it, kind of thing.
So you mentioned now in passing a couple of times the book club, and people might be wondering, so can you let us know what's up with here's the plug part of the podcast? Mutual plug though, because we're both involved in this project, alhamdulillah. But talk about the Productive Muslim Academy, so people understand what the Barakah Academy. I'm sorry. This is how involved I am. I don't know what it's called. All right. So tell us about the Barakah Academy project first, and then let us know about the book club portion of it.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So I think like I said, like things been this journey where we realized that we've made now our vision at Barakah Muslim to say we want to spread this Barakah culture. Like that's our thing now. We want to really go all out on Barakah culture and produce courses and coaches and trainers and books and trying to really understand what is the Barakah culture, how can we codify it and really share with the world and make it practical. So one of our first sort of really just platforms, and honestly see it more of a community of professionals who would say, I want to live this Barakah culture. And yes, there are courses. Yes, there are, we have the usual stuff, the courses and calls, stuff like that. But I'm hoping that one of the critical pieces, and this is where Omar comes in and really is helping us with, is actually having a book club. But this is not just, all right, let's all read a book for a month and then let's talk about it and hold hands and sing kumbaya. No, this is where, and the way Omar structured it, which I loved, is basically saying we're gonna choose a theme for a quarter, for 3 months, and we're gonna basically the first book, usually some book that is basically a mainstream book that's popular, everyone's reading,
let's talk tangibly. Let's go ahead and talk about what's going to be happening in the first module.
So the first one is leadership, right? Understands leadership. So the first book will be your
21 Laws of Leadership.
21 Laws of Leadership. So this is the mainstream, the stuff that you should be reading. Everyone is reading about it. Everyone's excited about it. And then the second book is the what's called contrarian book, which kind of just throws everything, which is the
Leadership BS.
Leadership BS. So completely destroys everything. Maybe not destroy, but
not destroys, but it
challenges.
It talks about why the theoretical concepts in something like the 21 Laws of Leadership aren't working in reality in a professional environment.
Exactly. And this is where critical thinking is established. And then the third is where our angle comes in. We talk about the faith element. So, for example, we'll talk about the prophetic leadership, the leadership of Prophet Muhammad, and say, well, how does this plug into what we discussed so far? And then we have a call after those 3 months, and we discuss those 3 books. And what the work you're doing is you're actually producing not just in the books, usually resources and curate resources and reading plans to really help people keep up. And what I love about this whole structure is, again, is I think we need that level of faith-based critical thinking skill that I think will be hopefully developed as we go through themes. We have first theme is leadership, second one things about ego,
and we don't want to just take these at face value. We really want to go deeper and assess, like, okay, what's being said, why is it being said, who's the author, and
what's the worldview.
And I mean, we were. So full disclosure, because I mean, no one listens to this podcast anyway, so we can talk freely.
Yeah.
But we were talking about the book Grit before this podcast, and this is a book that went viral because of the author's TED Talk, and there's a couple of things, right? So my take on the book is that it should have been a blog post. I think even the TED Talk was too long, because I think everything the book says can probably be summarized in a couple of paragraphs. But on the flip side, and we've both been coming across articles lately that actually the conclusions aren't complete. Because yes, there is an element of grit and developing resilience, and those are important skills for someone to have, but they don't exist in a vacuum. And some research that we're finding now is indicating that actually a stronger indicator of resilience is not me being a unicorn and being driven with all this grit, but it's, am I in an environment that supports and enables resiliency, right? And there's other variables at play, and so we want to go take something like that where we might not necessarily agree with the book itself or the reason that maybe it's a bestseller, but we might still want to look at it to see what are lessons that we draw, but then let's also look at it critically to see what's not talked about there.
Exactly. And then we add the faith element, we talk about sabr, right? Okay, let's talk about, so you spoke about grit, mainstream, grit, why perhaps it is not complete. Well, how does the concept of sabr...
But what does the complete perfection of sabr look like? And that's encapsulated for us, for example, in the Sirah.
Exactly. And so it's a way for us to, and I hope is really build a community around this. Our people who are thinking like this, who are trying to explore books like this, and just join this community. And we have a Slack channel going on. We have monthly calls. We have this book club going on. We've made it like as affordable as possible on a monthly basis or annual basis. So I'm looking forward to people to start joining and just be part of this, and let's really spread Barakah culture together. Let's make it a reality, inshallah.
Inshallah, and if you want to sign up, I'll have a link in the show notes for the episode. What website should they go to? I'll put all that in there. Okay.
Very easy.
All right. Anywhere you want people to follow you on social media, because I know you post a whole lot on there, right?
Just Barakah Muslim. That's all. Just follow Barakah Muslim, or if my personal is Mohammed Faris. Inshallah.
All right. So I'll link that up. All right. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair.